It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can reach me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting, either through my website, emailrevealer.com, or you can just email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. If you like our show, be sure and check out our Patreon. I put up constantly new content in Patreon. I'm about to put up a video up there of an interview that Sean Atwood did about me, about my whole connection to the whole Keith Abloh, John Benet Ramsey, John Mark Carr, Hunter Biden laptop story, okay, which is a very, very fascinating story. So you can check that out in my Patreon coming up. Also, too, all of our archives are free. You can go there to Spreaker and find our old shows. I encourage you to go back and look for the old shows I've done with our guest tonight, Ted Rubinstein. Ted Rubinstein. I'm sorry, Ted. Who you can find on my Spreaker channel. We've done many, many interviews with Ted. He comes to us with great knowledge all the time. Now, you can hear him directly on the Dallas Action and Quick Hits. These are two shows produced by Doug Campbell and Rob Clark. Where can you find those? Ted, are you there?
Yeah, they're on all the different platforms.
All the podcast catchers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, Ted, remind the audience, who is Ted Rubinstein?
Well, I'm an independent researcher, and I've been doing that for decades now, ever since the mid-'70s. My focus tends to be on the Kennedy assassination and organized crime and drug trafficking and things like that. And I've worked with Mae Brussel and Dave Emery, and also with Larry Flynt when he had the Werbell magazine going. That was just a few months back in the 80s. And now I do these podcasts that occasionally I'm featured on these podcasts, which are excellent podcasts. They both focus on the JFK assassination, the Dallas Action, and the Quick Hits with Doug Campbell and Rob Clark. Rob Clark also has his own podcast called The Lone Gunman.
Oh, okay. I've heard of that. Now, let me ask you this, too. Now, after all these years of discussing JFK, you haven't run out of things to do shows about?
Well, I especially don't, because I'm not on that often. But now, like you could take a show like the Black Op Radio, and Jim DiEugenio, he appears on that show on a regular basis, like every couple of weeks or so, and he manages to find things to talk about assassination related every time he shows up. As I say, there's plenty of times. But I will have to say that a lot of it does get a little redundant. He does seem to address the same topics again and again, and I wonder how many new listeners are they getting that haven't heard it before. But anyway.
But I agree with you about James DiEugenio, who's an incredible wealth of knowledge and on the spot, ready. This guy, whenever I say I need a guest, he's right there. Hey, Ed, I'll help you out. He'll break his schedule. He's a great guy.
Yeah,
man.
Well, he did a 25-part series with Dave Emery recently, or something like 25 segments. I mean, it just went on and on and on.
Dave Emery's back on the air?
He's always been on the air.
Oh, really? I thought he vanished or something.
I think he's not on as many venues as he used to be.
Okay.
And I think he just does that one show once a week. And I don't think it gets the listenership that it used to get. I listen occasionally, but I think it used to be better.
Okay. Well, I think we can say that about all of us, man. We're all getting older.
Better.
Yeah, we're all getting older.
Okay, but anyway, thanks to you, you made me aware of this Larry Flynt FBI file. Who was it that
Hopsicker.
FOIA'd that anyway.
Oh, Vice magazine.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. Well, let's start with this. How did you get involved with Flynt Publications? They came to you. You went to them.
They came to Jonathan Marshall. Oh, I'm going to use this as an occasion to promote that book. Glad he came up. They came to Jonathan Marshall, who's written books with Peter Dale Scott.
Oh, great.
About Iran-Contra and cocaine politics is another book they wrote together. Jonathan Marshall was writing for Inquiry Magazine and for The Chronicle and some other publications. And because he was already employed there, he told them he couldn't do it. They came to him to contribute in this magazine that Flynt was thinking of coming out with called the Werbell. And since he couldn't do it, and he'd been working with me, he suggested that I'd be an ideal candidate for this position, which was, I guess, research director. I was living in the Bay Area, and of course, Flynt operates from Los Angeles. And I didn't really have to think much about it. I decided, yeah, I'll take this, and so I moved down there. And I joined the magazine about, I guess, a couple of months into its tenure. The first issue that they came out with was just totally dedicated to Mae Brussel and the Nazi connections to the JFK assassination, and I think that was probably their most successful issue. And it only lasted, like, I would say, about 4 or 5 months beyond that. And incredibly enough, it was a weekly publication, not a monthly. It came out weekly during that period.
Well, what years was this?
This would have been late 83 to mid 84, or maybe early 84.
Okay, now let me ask you this, because...
And it covers, by the way, the period that the FBI file release covers.
Now, one of the things that was in the FBI file was a letter that Flynt mailed to Ronald Reagan's counsel, White House counsel, that just said, "We got to talk," right? Now, I've been hearing about for many, many years, okay, I'll say this, through people from High Times magazine back in the 80s who had a connection with Flynt Publications, okay? And I've heard this story, this rumor, since way back then, that Flynt had some gay sex tapes of Ronald Reagan. Now, when you were at Flynt, and that seems to be what that letter alludes to. What do you know about any of this? Are you on that tape?
I wish. Well, no, I don't want to be on the gay tape. No. Okay.
What do you know
I thought they were talking about, because I don't even think I'm familiar with whatever tape you're referring to.
Okay.
And I just went through like 80 pages of this file, and I did see them referring to the Vicki Morgan sex tapes, right, where she supposedly is engaged in sex acts with possibly Reagan and possibly some of Reagan's subordinates, such as Mich and Deaver.
Right.
So, but as I understand it, the shots are too grainy to really determine who they are. I don't know if you can determine whether it's Vicki Morgan or not, but you can't really determine who the men are. And but anyway, is this what you're talking about separate from the Vicki Morgan tapes? Because that's sort of. Go ahead.
No, I think even in the FBI files it talks. Yeah, we're talking about a pornography tape, which I was assuming was a tape that I heard about the gay sex tape of Ronald Reagan. Now I've asked other people about this too, but now you sound familiar with this Vicki Morgan tape. Now, did you watch? Have you seen that tape?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No. And I never met Larry Flynt either. I mean, I talked to him on the phone. I once went over to the mansion to drop off some Rebel magazines, but that's about it.
Okay.
But no. But that was sort of the big big news at the time was these Vicky Morgan tapes, and we didn't know what to make of it. We were assigned the stories that we were doing, or the people we were interviewing who were doing stories for the Rebel, and we left that to Larry Flynt and his pals to run down that track.
Who were his pals?
Pursue that.
Who were his pals?
Well, I don't know, whoever he was employing. Bill Ryder and so on, I guess.
Right. And Bill Ryder's the guy who was involved his gun was involved, excuse me, whose gun was involved in the Roy Radin hit?
At a later point, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Because my recollection, and it's a good one, is that we were told that there was a buzz around Hollywood that there had been this famous murder. There had been a murder of somebody, and that the suspicion was that Robert Evans was going to be charged. Or maybe they said it was just some famous personality, Hollywood personality, was going to be charged in connection with it. And we were assigned to try to find out who they were talking about. And we pretty quickly established that they were talking about Roy Radin and Robert Evans. But at that point in time, there was no suggestion that anyone employed by Larry Flynt had anything to do with this crime. And yet, I believe it was like a couple of years later, in 86 and 87, it developed that some of the people employed by Flynt as bodyguards were implicated in it. But it would have been total news to us.
Do you think it's possible that Flynt gave you that assignment to see what you could dig up in order to maybe cover tracks?
Well, we didn't. I got the assignment from the editor of the Rebel, Jim Good.
Okay.
Now, whether he got it from Larry Flynt, I don't know. So I couldn't answer that.
Very interesting. Now, did you read the part in the FBI file that talks about Mich Werbell and Gordon Novell?
Right.
And go ahead.
That happened when I was working there, and that was something that really got Mae Brussels' attention, because, of course, she'd been broadcasting about these people in connection with her, assassination broadcasts. People like Mich Werbell and Gordon Novell and Gordon Liddy were the three whose names I recall us being suddenly called to the mansion and being hired by Flynt as we just thought it was just part of this bodyguard assignment, but what I gathered from these files is that possibly Flynt's plans were more ambitious. And this thing, see, we didn't hear anything about that Flynt had a plan to wire up his wheelchair with explosives and then blow himself up in front of the Supreme Court. We hadn't heard any inkling about this, and I presume Mae Brussels hadn't heard anything about it either. But she was very alarmed that these people were going to show up at Larry's house, at Larry's mansion, and provide him with some sort of security services or whatever. And but she was she made light of it, and especially in light of the fact that Flynt was offering $1 million for anyone who could provide him with the names of people that could be tied to the Kennedy assassination. And Mae Brussels is saying, "What the hell?"
Right. Well, explain to the audience.
I should be getting the reward because the people you're inviting you're inviting right now to protect you are the people who killed Kennedy. So right. I'm telling you this, and where's my reward money?
Explain to the audience who Gordon Novell is and who Mich Werbell is.
Okay. Gordon Novell is an electronics expert from New Orleans who's associated with many intriguing things like the Jim Garrison investigation, UFOs,
John DeLorean
technology.
He got the John
DeLorean.
Yeah.
The Watergate tapes.
Waco and
the Waco, the World's Fair, this boat called the Shangri-La that was a floating arms bazaar. He's associated with that story. Anyway, he's what I would call the classic intriguer. He died a few years ago. I spoke to him one time, and he was pretty impressed with me. He said, "Oh, Paul, if I get over to L.A., I'll have to invite you out to dinner, to lunch sometime." But that never happened. So anyway, I think I think he was more talk than action. But he was, he was pretty classic intriguer, as I said.
Yeah, he talked about dating Elizabeth Taylor and stuff. He said the day of the Kennedy assassination, he was in bed with Elizabeth Taylor.
No, he didn't say he was in bed with her. He said he was at Toots Shores with her, didn't he?
I don't know. That's my memory. My own memory's probably flawed. I'm sure. Okay. So,
he was a pretty good-looking guy, though.
In his young years.
I don't think he was making a claim that was that extravagant.
Okay.
It was Liz Taylor, though?
I don't know that Liz Taylor ever mentioned his name at all, that I know of.
No, but he mentioned her name.
Oh, I believe so, yeah.
Is that,
on the Kerry Cassidy, the Kerry Cassidy tape, where he talked about getting a hold of some UFO secrets from him. He got a hold of some technology or something,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Free energy, time travel.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a serious guy on other levels. Very serious guy. Now, that's
okay.
Gordon.
So, you're presuming the audience already knows who Gordon Liddy is. So then you were asking me, who's Mich Werbell? Mich Werbell, he has various nicknames. One of them is the Wizard of Whispering Death. He's a American intelligence community affiliated individual who designed all these fancy weapons, automatic weapons, the Ingram Mac 11 or Mac 10, one of those.
Really?
And he designed silencers for some of these sophisticated weapons. And he was not only pals with some of the other intriguers whose names have come up in connection with the Kennedy assassination, but he also employed them later in the 70s with his company called Parabellum, which designed these weapons. And that would include Jerry Patrick Hemming. It includes the late Edwin Kaiser, and it includes Anselmo Allegro, this Cuban exile guy who's tied in with the Lansky crowd and so on. The Lansky crowd, the Cuban exiles. And he, Werbell died shortly after. He was an alcoholic, smoked and drank a lot. And he died somewhat mysteriously while in the employ of Larry Flynt. And we did hear at the time that the rumor was that somehow Larry Flynt had killed him. Or one of Larry Flynt's employees, such as William Ryder, killed Werbell. And I believe the files refer to that.
Now, wait, let me ask you a question real quick. Ryder is missing in action. No one knows where Ryder is, right?
I don't know. You probably know better than I do.
Yeah, as far as I know, he's untraceable at this stage of life, which is interesting. But real quick, though.
Well, most prisoners, though, if they're serving the standard sentence, you can keep track of them. It's only when they, have some informant status, such as Carlos later, that you sort of lose track of them, right?
But the thing, NDOC, you can find anybody. A quick 10-second search. There's no state in the country you can't find an inmate. But the thing is, he's serving time. Ryder's serving time for what?
I don't know.
No, I don't.
But
believe
I would imagine that any sentence that he was serving time for, he's probably already served, and he's probably out now.
Well, I know he wasn't charged. He wasn't charged in the Robert Evans murder. Excuse me, raided murder. Okay, which Robert Evans was never charged in either.
Was Ryder connected with was Ryder connected with? Was he convicted of any murders?
I don't believe he was ever convicted of any murders. No, it was his gun that Bill Menser used to kill Roy Radin, and then Ryder went to the cops and turned everybody in, and admitted, yeah, I gave him this gun. The story isn't public. Is I gave him this gun to go commit a murder.
Okay.
Yeah, and then he walked.
Well. Yeah, well, the first guy who cooperates does tend to do that.
Yeah.
So he probably did well for himself, and he's out and about. Whether he's still working for the government is probably anyone's guess.
Now, you were discussing this death of Mich Werbell, where he died of the coroner said it was a bad heart, right? But there wasn't
right, and that's what we presumed that it probably was. We presumed that was the most likely explanation. Certainly, no one has ever been charged in connection with the death of Mich Werbell.
But the thing is, these FBI documents, they discuss that Larry Flynt had given him a check of $1 million to go kill Bob Guccione, Hugh Hefner, and I think Attenberger, the other guy, the publisher. And I believe it was even a couple of other people. And that an aide to Larry Flynt put stop payment on the check. So there was a check written, because we know that a stop payment was paid on this check. And that was Flynt's motive for going after and murdering Werbell. And the FBI documents mention some litigation, a court case, where a witness stated that it was Larry Flynt's brother-in-law who put the potion or the medication in Mr. Werbell's drink to cause his heart to slow down and stop.
Is the brother-in-law William Ryder?
Oh, I don't know.
I think it is.
Oh, that's interesting.
Maybe I only started looking at this file last night, and I didn't. 300 pages, and I guess I went through about the first 90 pages.
Well, you were there, you lived it, So now, did you hear anything about that? The $1 million hit to kill Hugh Hefner.
I think we heard about a feud between Flynt and Guccione. That still rings a bell. But not that they cut a check for that purpose. That sounds like something I didn't know about. What I think is that that Flynt was taking these really high potency opiates.
Oh yeah,
because he was in so much pain, and I think a lot of what he was doing was just highly irrational, and I don't know how much he was fully conscious of what he was doing, and I think it was one of these circumstances where the people around him decided to sort of do what they could to protect him, and so. If he's going to cut a check like that for that purpose and implicate himself in such a way, they're going to take some action to see that he doesn't get charged with something that's just that blatant.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned earlier too that Jerry Hemming, right?
Jerry Hemming,
right?
Yeah.
Have you ever read A.J. Weberman's book about Jerry? Jerry Did It.
I have that book, and I'm probably one of the few people who has that book.
Yeah.
But I have not read it all the way through. And most people do not go so far as to accuse Hemming directly of being involved in the assassination. Now, I don't feel I'm in a position to weigh in on that one way or the other.
Yeah, I had.
It wouldn't surprise me if he was, but I will say this. If he was, in fact, involved directly himself, he was playing an awfully risky game by becoming involved in it. He first inserted himself into the whole controversy when he showed up with a couple of his pals in Jim Garrison's office in 1967 and started talking about these people that he had odds with, who were also American mercenaries involved with the anti-Castro Cubans. And that is, in fact, how Lauren Hall. Well, no, that's not the first time that Lauren Hall was in, because Lauren Hall first came up when the Warren report was going to press, and they were in a quandary to have to account for the Sylvia Odio story. And she was a pretty credible individual, and she claimed that Lee Harvey Oswald had showed up at her house in September '63 in the company of a couple of anti-Castro exiles. And the Warren Commission was not able to explain the story away easily, but they got an out when Lauren Hall was presented as a possible person who had visited her, but he denied it, and the people that were said to have been with him also denied it. The net result of the whole thing was that the account was not knocked down, but it was determined that Lee Harvey Oswald could not have both been at her place and have been on his way to Mexico City at the same time, because a person can't be in two places at once. However, an imposter can be in one place and the real one can be in the other place. A lot of people believe now that one of the anti-Castro Cubans who visited Sylvia Odio, whether in the company of the real Lee Harvey Oswald or an imposter, was the infamous Bernardo de Torres, who was a very intriguing figure, sometime friend and compatriot of Jerry Patrick Hemming. But and I'm not sure the chronology here, but Hemming and Laborde, I don't know, one or two of the other mercenaries showed up at Garrison's office in '67. And that was either before or after Bernardo de Torres had offered his services to Garrison as a private investigator who mainly operated out of Miami, but who knew a lot of the anti-Castro exiles in New Orleans. He offered his services to Garrison, and one of the first assignments he had was to go to look up this guy who was a pal of David Ferry's, named Eladio Del Valle, who had been running anti-Castro operations, errands. Sometimes they would drop bombs, sometimes they would just drop leaflets. And supposedly the story was that Ferry, before he died, had implicated Del Valle, and that Garrison sent Bernardo de Torres to find him, but before de Torres could find him, de Valle was found dead. This is February 22nd, 1967, the same date that Ferry was found dead.
Wow.
Now, the podcast we mentioned has cast doubt on some of these facts and suggests that the person that de Torres was really searching for in Miami was not Del Valle, but was another guy named Mario Garcia Gonzalez or something. Who's rather an obscure figure. I'm beginning to realize that some of these facts are a little obscure for the purpose of this.
Yeah, that's so true. So, Ted, what did you want to tell us about the oligarch situation in the United States?
All right. I will introduce this by reading something that I posted a couple of weeks back. I got it from Ingrid Alisich, and it's a quote, and this is how it goes. If a man has an apartment stacked to the ceiling with newspapers, we call him crazy. If a woman has a trailer house full of cats, we call her nuts. But when people pathologically hoard so much cash that they impoverish the entire nation, we put them on the cover of Fortune magazine and pretend they are role models. Now, you might have heard that just this week, or within the last week or so, Jeff Bezos, one of my favorite characters, purchased MGM for $9 billion. Am I quoting it accurately?
Yeah.
And shortly after that announcement came out, there was an announcement that the U.S. government had awarded a contract to build, as I remember it was a lunar landing station or something out in space for $10 billion. Was being awarded to Elon Musk's outfit, SpaceX. But they didn't want to shortchange Bezos. So at the same time, they announced that they were awarding a contract to Bezos' company called Blue Origins, the rival of SpaceX, for $10 billion to also build a lunar landing or whatever it is, space station out there. And the explanation they gave was that so that we would have redundancy in the space program. So this is the reason we're giving someone who's already worth north of $100 billion, who just purchased MGM for $9 billion, he's getting the sweetheart contract from the U.S. government for $10 billion, so he doesn't have to spend a cent of his own money because, wow, all we want to do is further reward these ultra oligarchs. We don't want to cost them a penny. It's also come out that since the pandemic started, the billionaires of this country have added an additional $1.3 trillion to their earnings. Now, I guess that sounds like a lot of money. It does to me, $1.3 trillion. And yet, Biden is proposing a budget that is, to my understanding, is $6 trillion. And he's calling it infrastructure. And I don't get the impression that it's just the oligarchs that are going to be paying for it, although my brother tries to assure me that it is, in fact, the wealthy that Biden has in mind to pay for all this stuff.
Well, actually, no, he's talking about raising the tax on corporations. Well, I have 2 corporations, so that means he's raising my taxes. And there's no way around that. People think that when you say corporations, most corporations are small businesses, or individuals even, or most corporations. The big, 1%. They don't have that many corporations because they're one. They're the minority of the rest of us. And I think too, you talk about redundancy in the space program. What about some redundancy in medical care and health care for the people walking around paying for this stuff, man?
But doesn't the fact that you have corporations mean that you're eligible for all kind of money that they're giving away if you can claim you have a company?
Well, I got some money, SBA money. I did get some SBA money, but I haven't even got my stimulus. They keep mailing me letters saying, hey, congratulations, you're going to get some stimulus, but I never got that money, none of that. So
Oh, that is the only money I have. I have received that stimulus money, but that is all I've received.
Yeah.
But anyway, I wanted to also take this occasion to promote a really good program I saw the other day on CNN, of all places. I'm not a big... I do watch CNN quite a bit, but, I watch them all quite a bit. I'm a big critic of them all, though. Anyway, they have... You may know this guy. He's had a show on CNN for quite a while. His name is Werbell.
Don't know.
Kemau, last name Bell. He's a black guy out of Oakland, about 50 years old, and apparently he's been doing this a long time. And he had one a month ago called The Wealth Tax, in which he focused on just what I wanted to talk about for the rest of the program. And it featured, among other things, an economist named Richard Wolff, a Marxian economist, who was just talking about the insanity of a society where you allow people to make more money than they could ever possibly spend in 100 lifetimes, when most people can't, when a lot of people can't afford health care or don't have a place to live or worry about where their next meal are coming from. Just whether a society like that is sustainable in the long run, with an emphasis on the fact that it's only gotten worse since the pandemic hit. And yet, as this Richard Wolff was emphasizing, there has not even been a proposal to raise a wealth tax to make up for this discrepancy. I will say, though, I have heard Bernie Sanders talking about that to some extent.
Okay.
Although even to the extent that he talks about it, Jimmy Dore still criticizes him for thinking he's not serious about it.
Yeah, forget Jimmy Dore. But listen, in the Small World Department, guess who I am interviewing this Thursday?
You tell me.
Dr. Richard Wolff. I feel like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love the synchronicity.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of it. Because I was not familiar with him, but he impressed me a lot.
Me neither. I just heard him on, he has this democracyatwork.info, I think is the website, or .org, and he's one of the hosts, does a radio show one night a week over there. And incredible. I listened to this guy on the radio, and I sat there in the car until I heard his name, and he's got his website, and so I can invite him on the show. Great work.
So you only heard about him recently also?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, he's really good.
His latest book is The Sickness is the System, When Capitalism Fails to Save Us from a Pandemic or Itself.
Among the things he pointed out was the fact that during wartime, they don't allow, we historically have not allowed people to enrich themselves while other people are fighting and dying for the American system or whatever. And he conceded that, the pandemic, it's not a literal war, but maybe the same sort of principles should apply. And certainly people should be raising questions, and certainly these oligarchs should not be the object of all this fawning attention. Now, in Gates' situation, he no longer has that he no longer enjoys the reputation with the media that he did just a few weeks ago, and that's only because of the divorce. You have to keep in mind that Gates, I don't know if he needed to do it, but he was smart enough to realize that if he threw a whole lot of money at the media, it would ensure that he would get favorable coverage, at least a lot of the time. But what he didn't count on was that by palling around with the likes of Epstein, that it would piss off his wife to the extent that she was going to make a thing out of it, and now they're asking questions of why would you go to this guy for advice about your toxic marriage, and why do you need to go to him because you're obsessed on getting a Nobel Peace Prize? How did you think Epstein was going to help you accomplish that goal? But anyway, he's gotten a lot of egg on his face, so now he's sort of, Gates has been running for cover, But Bezos certainly doesn't seem to feel the need for that. The most I read that he was just recently interviewed by Australian TV, and they were hyping it by, here, Bezos is a great prediction of what's to come in the future. So Bezos gets no opprobrium heaped upon him for capitalizing off this pandemic, so he's still getting real good press. Okay, your turn.
Well, I got to tell you, I don't know. We've known about Gates and Epstein for years. I don't know what the new thing is. Just that she got divorced and hired some really good PR people to get her side of the story out there. It's clear, too, that Gates and Epstein were manipulating the media, and all these guys do. They're all hobnobbing with the media way back and all this stuff. And the media is complicit in all this. There's a woman going on right now. Several of them are going around right now talking about Epstein's influence over the media, that they would hold these big parties with media influencers every year, and week-long conferences. So, yep.
I think Ghislaine will live to stand trial.
Yes, I do. I think same. Just like you mentioned, Carlos later. I think she'll get a deal like that. I think too that Epstein was probably walked out of there, which happens a lot more than people realize.
You think they were operating with a lookalike?
Well,
I'm not saying you're wrong, but
yeah,
I don't know. It seems like a tall order.
Well, no, he could have been drugged, and put in that arm stretcher.
Oh, I see.
Well, why not? A lot of things.
I do find it intriguing that they say that Ghislaine was convinced she was untouchable because of the intelligence she had provided to one or another country, presumably Israel, but possibly also the United States. But that she was under the delusion that she could continue to live in the United States and that they wouldn't scoop her up.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what she was thinking by putting the phone in the aluminum foil.
That's pretty.
She read something stupid on the internet. I don't know.
Well, you can go on the internet and come up with a Faraday bag. I have them. These things exist.
What?
Or a Faraday cage or a Faraday bag. It's a bag that's lined in, and the cell phone the signal doesn't go through.
I see.
They sell these things. And there's even Faraday rooms, where they used to work on the beepers back in the old days. And you'd go into a Faraday, they call it a Faraday cage, but it was a whole room that would block any kind of signals from coming and going. So, so who was advising this woman? I have no idea. But it definitely wasn't competent counsel in any of her depositions, which were just so pathetically childish, I have no explanation for any of this, And this woman, her supposed spokesperson, who somehow wound up, was a blogger of some type, Goldstein, I think she was, who wound up with a daily White House press briefing pass, that she was sitting there in the daily White House press briefing with basically as a freelancer with no outlet of any real importance. One bizarre thing after another in this whole scene that I don't think it'll be more muddled than the JFK assassination 50 years from now, people, because they're going to drip drab all little kind of confusing things all along the way every couple of years. It's hopeless.
Yeah.
And the quality of people out there looking into this are not the quality of the people that have spent 30 years looking at JFK. And there's a bunch of crackpots with YouTube channels who just blurt out anything that comes into their head.
Yeah.
Ted, we're out of time. We got 2 minutes. What would you like to leave us with?
I want to encourage people to look up this program on CNN called United Shades of America with Kemal Bell, but it has not been uploaded yet. I just checked before I went on the air today, and apparently it's not been put up online yet. But I guess presumably just in the next couple of weeks it'll be up there so people can see it. I got a lot out of it. And I just I noticed that this wealth tax, it is being talked about by Biden, but only to the extent that there is a difference between the earnings of black Americans and white Americans. And I'm not quarreling with that at all, but I just think we can we can tackle both aspects of the wealth gap. I have no problem with emphasizing the racial aspect of it, but please let's not let these billionaires off the hook as they continue to get wealthier and wealthier at the expense of all the rest of us.
Yeah, it's so true. There definitely are certain industries out there that should be nationalized, should be broken up. We've done it before in the old days. I don't know why. When's the last time we've broken up one of these monopolies? Hasn't happened in a long time. Ted Rubinstein, thank you so much. You always come here with a wealth of knowledge and experience, and you've forgotten more than most people out there even know, which is the truth, man. Thank you so much, brother. Thank you for coming out. And for being flexible, too, with me. I've been on the road like all day long. So I really appreciate you, my friend.
Well, good on you.
Good night.